seconded by Councillor Morrison. And the recommendation is that the application for the development variance permit to vary requirements from zoning bylaw 3199/2013 for the purpose of building a laneway house be approved for lot 1617 block 16 plan NEP 34-9 district lot 150 land district 26 at 519 Robson as per attached plans as follows. The zoning bylaw number 3199/2013 and Schedule A to vary the maximum gross floor area from 89 square meters to 98 square meters. Question, Councillor Page.
On this one, only one. And maybe this is for staff, Alex. The basement, no brainer to me. It seems like you're not really having any impact outside of that increased storage. But the balcony, which I believe by my sighting is along the back alley, it seems like the difference between having a patio and the roof lines sloping away from that public space versus like a balcony really makes a difference in how imposing that building is going to be on those backs. And that seems to be the consensus I hear about the laneway houses is the size, how imposing they end up being in some of those more private spaces for people.
For sure. I don't have an image for you right now, but I was actually hoping if you weren't going to be in a meeting until just before this, over the weekend, we got the model of this laneway house actually delivered, and some of you may have seen it in our office if you stopped by today. But we actually have a model that's about this big and this tall of it. Feel free to stop by anytime and check it out. And so the balcony area, what is a bit different about the design, and I think, you know, in this case, why staff recommending in favor of the variance for this reason is that it's already pretty much enclosed in, except for the one side, so that's facing the lane. It's got a roof, it's got two sides on it. Even when you're looking at a model that's this big, at first it looks like you're looking at interior space, and then until you realize you can put your finger through it. So it's a bit of a different design, and than your sort of traditional balcony or deck.
So the balcony doesn't stick out from you.
No.
I looked at it today, and it's actually enclosed in the same.
Exactly, it's fully enclosed except for one side.
Like a dormer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, like a dormer.
Yeah.
Okay. That was question answered.
Good question and a good answer.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none. All in favor? Thanks very much, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
Carried. The next one is 611 Vernon, and this is fairly self-explanatory. Development Services received an application to vary the zoning 3199/2013 for assisted living facility at 611 Vernon Street to increase the maximum height from 16 meters to 18.5 and to increase the lot coverage from 90% to 94%. And this was already done in 2018, and the permit had sort of lapsed. Is that right, Kevin? And so now it has to come back for renewal since the proponent is getting ready to move forward with this project. So below there is a staff recommendation, and if somebody wishes to move it, that's fair. If not, then Councillor Lochtenberg mover, seconded by Councillor Renwick. And the recommendation is the application for development variance permit to vary the requirements of zoning bylaw 3199/2013 to allow for the construction of a 125 unit assisted living facility on the subject property approved for lot 16 to 24 on block 67, district lot 95, Kootenay District Plan 9500 at 611 Vernon Street as follows: to increase the permitted lot coverage from 90% to 94% as per attached plans, and to increase the maximum building height from 16 to 18.5 as per attached plans. And if you need further clarification, you're welcome to get it from staff. Natalie, available there? Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Natalie. Yeah. Councillor Woodward has a question, I think, for you.
I just wanted a point of clarification on this building.
Sure.
If I understand it correctly, it's not freehold. It's actually like people are living there and paying like a rental fee essentially to be there.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
not a freehold. People don't own the. Okay.
Exactly.
So it's basically a rental building.
Basically a rental building with facilities specifically designed for seniors.
Right,
Yeah, and then there's increasing levels of care depending on people's needs.
right,
Yeah, it'd be similar to the other ones already in the city, the
right.
Golden Life ones, all down in the east waterfront there.
Right. I just wanted, it kind of aligns well because of the recent RDCK housing assessment saying that the senior population will be growing and we're actually gonna need a fair amount of more housing for that population, so.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you. Councillor Luchtenberg.
I have a question that's more of a policy question about doing these variances, particularly ones of this size. And this is, Kevin, I'm sure you'll want to weigh on this too, but let's say I ask for a requirement as a trade for this permit that this development connect to our district energy system or future district energy system, or be electric heat only. So, and then as a general policy question going forward, can we start to look at variances and look at the necessary trades that need to be made inevitably down the road? I'm thinking about there's a requirement to join our EcoSave program, and to, if you want a variance, because there's a, you know, you're asking for something from your fellow citizens, generally there's a variance is putting an imposition on other people. Is that a good opportunity to ask them to?
Could I ask you, Councillor Luchtenberg, so if we stay on this for a moment, and then when we're finished with this, if you've got a question around that you want to put to staff, you're welcome. Yeah.
Okay, so the specific one then is, again, I'm not saying that we should do this, although I'm definitely would be interested in hearing an answer to it and moving ahead, but connecting to our district energy system and future potential district energy system, or a requirement to be electric heat as a part of the trade for the variance.
So it's my understanding that through legislation that you can't require that at variance stage.
Okay.
If they were asking for a rezoning, you can negotiate those a little bit more fine detail. But if council is interested in this, we can always ask the proponent if they'd be interested. They've seemed very open to lines of communication. They're quite a bit down the process now, but it doesn't hurt to ask. So
Okay.
yeah.
And then, so then as a broader question, given that the NDP is part of their platform, and we put this forward at UBCM, a request for expanded powers in terms of fuel switching and that kind of thing, that this, as a communication out to the building community, that this is likely to come.
Right.
If not now, certainly in the next year or two, where you really, really need to take seriously a fuel switch away from gas, gas to electric. And then in general, Kevin, I guess the question for you is this something that we can be pushing our district energy system, given it's right there? It seems like a perfect.
Yeah, no, I think, as Natalie said, this building's been in the works for a while now, and again, I think you're always looking for balance. You know, as Councillor Woodward said, you know, seniors housing's really important, and you know, ultimately as council, you need to kind of weigh those things. If you know some of those other policies kind of get in the way of this one, you know, that'll be a debate you have. But certainly, you know, I think, you know, getting talking to developers early, and sometimes the building's pretty well designed and ready to go before they ever come to us. So then it's really hard to, you know, start to backtrack. But I think being proactive, you know, I think probably we build district energy and are running all the way to the Civic past them already. I think that's probably an easy one to, you know, as long as we're there early enough in the process that they can design to that. You know, right now there's some risk. We're applying for a grant to get this district energy system built. So if I'm building a new building, do I design it hoping that that's going to happen? So we need to get some certainty around those things, get in front of people, you know, get that word out. And I agree with you. Let's be proactive on that and let people know that here's how we're trying to both support your project as well as meet, you know, council's goals and community goals. And we have a lot of that in our OCP already. So, you know, all those policy documents. But again, people tend to already be so far down a path, you go, well, hold on a sec, right? And we see that all over the place. But I think as part of this you know, if we're moving there, we better do a great job of communicating, reaching out, helping people get there, because I think that's always the best way, as opposed to forcing somebody into something, you know, seeing how they would benefit from that. Because in this case, you know, I don't know what they're using on the mechanical side of it, but I can tell you baseboard heating is the cheapest
Cheapest thing you
solution
can put in.
for anybody to put in, and so there's a natural thing. It's not the most efficient heating. It is non-carbon, but it's not the most efficient heating out there. So you're wasting energy, precious energy. But district energy might be a really good solution for them. So I think any of those things, you know, we just need to get out in front of these things.
So the key there, of course, Councillor Luxembourg, is we need certainty around the district energy system. You know, it's like having a grocery store on the side of the road. If there's no grocery store, you're not going to stop for milk. So you're not even going to ask for it. So we need some certainty around district energy before we start pushing people in that direction. But if we could somehow ascertain that there may be a demand, that would help us, you know, in delivering the product in the first place. So, Sam, you had something you wanted to add? So Sam's our chief building inspector here, so.
Just the other thing on this particular building, it's not so much they're asking for a variance as it is about the site. Just happens that site drops off.
Yeah.
So when they're building on Vernon Street, well within our normal requirements. So it's just the site drops off, and we have to measure this, you know, this averaging between the top and the bottom, and it creates this, in my mind, a bit of an artificial sort of situation. And, you know, maybe we need to look at our policy documents to not have to come back to council to say, well, actually, they're achieving what all your policy documents say. However, because of some quirkiness in the site, now we have to come and get them to do a variance.
Which is not unusual in Nelson because of the lay of the land. So Sam, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah, just the one thing that's happened with this project, because it's been delayed, if they don't apply before January 1st, which they probably won't, they'll be required to build a step code 2, which means that they're gonna have to look at their mechanical systems. And so there's a good chance that it's gonna get built with better mechanical systems, and I think we let them know that, right?
We let them know that. It's likely not going to be submitted before January 1st.
Yeah, so that's,
So that opens up that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Around this opportunity.
District energy might be exactly.
So Councillor Woodward and then Councillor
Just
Page.
really quick, I just really wanted to say, could you, as development services, could you say, would you be interested in looking at electric heat, for example? Like, and kind of pushing that along a little bit?
Of course, yeah, and they seem really open to conversations, and I will absolutely suggest it and start. And I mentioned the district energy thing, and they can reach out to our staff for more details on it, and we can start the conversation. They seem very open, so.
Just because if you look at this as a 50-year project, the GHG impact of 50 years of gas compared to 50 years of electric from Nelson Hydro would be great.
And
Absolutely.
We like electricity, we sell it.
Yeah.
well, on the other thing,
Councillor Page, you're up next.
I just want to warn, let's not be too prescriptive. Let's be clear on the objective, not on how we get there, because if this is going natural gas, that means you're probably dealing with a boiler unit on a building this size. If you're dealing with a boiler unit, and I was just going to suggest this, is can it, you know, be district energy ready, which is a conduit into the boiler room sufficiently sized to bring in a pipe, if that's what you end up doing, if you're going to cross-link these things, right? It's not necessarily that they have to or it's going to be there, but it's making sure that you have a sufficiently sized conduit out to the outside that allows you to hook up to a system if it does come running down your back alley.
Okay, so we went off the rails a little bit here, so, but good ideas, and Natalie, you got the message there.
I
and
got
pic-
the message,
And you
I
got the
did, yeah.
picture.
I did,
So
yeah.
thanks very much, so.
Thank you.
If we didn't have these conversations, probably nothing would happen, so. Anyway, there is a resolution on the floor that's been moved and seconded, and I'm gonna call the question. All in favour? Carried, thanks very much. Next one is, Pine Street. The applicant is requesting to, stratify 9 Pine Street from R2 medium density residential zone property with the existing home. The property owner intends to construct 8 new residential units and wishes to strata title each separately. Council is being requested to approve the strata title conversion. And there's a full package there and a recommendation, and I know this property very well. Beautiful spot up there.
Move the recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Lochtenberg. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favour? Carried. Thanks very much. All right. Next is 7th Street Garden request, and there's a bit of a change on this from the last time we met. And were we taking that off the agenda?
Withdrawn.
Okay. You're gonna, okay, so we're removing that from the agenda. Okay. They weren't quite ready with all of their information, so. The next one is 516 Silica, which won't come up on my computer, but I do have the paperwork here. Thanks, Sarah. The City of Nelson Development Service and Engineering Department issued a building permit number BP 150804 on August the 5th. Whoop, sorry.
Nelson leaves.
Sorry, but that's, there's no backup with that? That's the one I'm looking for. There's nothing there. I'm sorry, but there's nothing there. Here, thank you. Okay. All right. Sometimes computers work, sometimes they don't. Okay, so has everybody got it on their screen? Okay? All right.
Yep.
This is a request for a bylaw exemption for 120 Silica. The Nelson Leafs are requesting extend a bylaw exemption grant from 2018 for additional 3 years to allow for household hazardous waste collection at a facility housed in front of the recycling center at 120 Silica. The current exemption will expire on October 16th. That's tight. And they did come here and give us an overview at the last meeting. There's lots of documentation here. And there is a staff recommendation somewhere in here.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Renwick. Here it is. Here we go. And seconded by Councillor Page. And that the request to exempt the waste and recycling facility from locating in the front yard of 120 Silica under 129 of the zoning bylaw 3199/2013 be approved for additional 3 years, subject to the following: that the Nelson Leafs Regional District of Central Kootenay and the City of Nelson work collaboratively over the next 3 years to develop a sustainable option for a long-term, more appropriate location that satisfies all parties, whether within the city limits or not, for consideration of council. Moved and second. Any questions or comments? You got a question?
I got a question. So I'm looking at the subject to, and we just even today had another discussion around supporting businesses specifically. Like, I don't have a problem with pushing this forward another 3 years. What I'm worried about with this wording that the Leafs, the regional district, and the City of Nelson work collaboratively over the next 3 years to develop a suitable option, long-term, more appropriate location that satisfies all parties, whether within the city limits or not, for consideration of council. I'm just wondering where we're at with supporting a particular proponent that's come forward, brought this to the RD as an option to provide this service, and whether or not they have the capacity or long-term planning in place to continue to provide that service, if it is incumbent upon the city or even appropriate for the city to be working collaboratively with this private entity to find a solution that works for them, as opposed to making sure that the service itself is delivered with the RD, whoever may come forward and want to put a CCAN on their property. Now, I recognize realistically this is who we have providing this service at the moment, but I feel like this language gets us over the line in terms of supporting a specific business being the long-term provider of this thing we provided a temporary exemption for. Does that make sense?
So I think our role is really about site and zoning. Our role is not to make this a viable or unviable business. Our interest is about, as I said, the site and the zoning. You know, in reflection, when I'm reading this, you know, making this conditional on other parties working collaboratively, I don't know if that's necessarily, we can't force the other party to this or parties to this to work collaboratively. So I think maybe you want to simplify it, that the city work with the proponent and the regional district who's responsible for this material to find a suitable site. And leave it at that.
See, yeah, I would amend this just to be the regional district in the city of Nelson, of which obviously the proponent would be around, but I just don't think it should be contingent. And I forced it.
I think right now that is the proponent. That doesn't, we're just finding a suitable site. If somebody else wanted to start up a hazardous waste material or they have a contract with the RDCK, not us. And if the RDCK pulls that, then so be it. Our interest is finding a site for this proponent would be no different than finding a site for Nelson Cares or any other nonprofit. This isn't a private business. This is actually a nonprofit. And so I don't see it any different than any other nonprofit. If that nonprofit lost their contract with the province or whoever and didn't need that site, then I assume that is. I don't think we're saying it has to be this outfit, but we're working in terms of the site. So I don't mind, I don't think it matters to us. We're interested in the site.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Okay, I had to Councillor Woodward and Councillor Luxembourg.
So just a point of clarification, I know that the space between the building, the current Nelson Leafs building, and the beginning of the Cottonwood Park is actually slated, not the alleyway, but there's actually a slated plan
Zoning.
in the Railtown
Yeah.
redevelopment plan, right? So, what I guess what I'm concerned about is
Single.
when you're saying the city is interested in zoning, we don't own the lot that
No.
this is on.
And we don't own any lots or most lots that are zoned.
Right. But we do own the lot right behind. Is that correct? And it's part of the Railtown redevelopment plan.
Yeah.
And I think,
part of the reason for this being on the table like this, because this doesn't fit with the long-term
that's right.
Railtown
right.
plan. So
Yes.
Yeah.
so that's why we're
Okay.
want to work with whatever organization that runs this type of service. It's not just the CCAN.
It's the, yeah.
Yeah.
I think just for clarification is,
Yeah.
because we're thinking about, 5-10 years down the road, what's that area going to look like? Is this the kind of situation you want happening right in that area?
Yeah. So it's like I said, it's bigger than the CCAN. It's to be
The whole site.
the vision for that area isn't a recycling facility. It's more active housing, business, etc. that would fit with that. So that is exactly why it's on here. But it's just one of those vehicles that you have any authority over right now as far as the private business.
Right.
As long as
So I would just agree with Councillor Page that maybe there just needs to be a, collaborative. I love the idea of collaboration, but maybe for clarity, it's really that we're looking at our zoning future, not so much this particular
we can just
organization.
call finding an appropriate site for this operation, I guess.
Thank you.
Can I,
Okay, could you hear Kevin back there? You can? Okay, good. Thank you. Councillor Luxembourg.
yeah, so then for wording, it seems to me that the regional district is ultimately responsible, not the Leafs. The Leafs
Right. They're a
may or
con-
may not end up holding this, so it should be
Exactly.
something like, subject to the following, that the regional district, and you can cut out the whole first part, develop a suitable, so that the regional district, over the next 3 years, develop a suitable option for a long-term or appropriate location that satisfies all parties, whether within city or limits or not, for consideration of council. That just cleans that
Okay,
right up.
so we're gonna ask you to repeat that. I'm just telling Sarah here, sorry.
Want to leave the city in there, I think.
So this is an amendment that you're making?
Yeah.
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 So he's putting forward a motion that'll be somewhat different than this.
Yeah, just cleaning it up to Councillor Page's point. So for an additional 3 years, subject to the following, so it's the subject to, that the regional district of Central Kootenai develop a suitable, that the regional district, over the next 3 years, develop a suitable option for a long-term, more appropriate location that satisfies all parties, whether within city limits or not, for consideration by council.
Maybe we can get rid of all parties. I think we're the party they
Yeah,
have to satisfy.
exactly.
We can't compel them, right? We need to leave ourselves in here.
We are, because we're the final authority for consideration by council.
This is delivered by Central Waste anyway, so we're a partner in that. So we are partner in Central Waste.
Yeah. But ultimately, whatever comes to council, as it
Okay.
says.
So let's get the word, can you read that back at all? Gabe, did you get that?
I can. Just to be clear, so there is a motion on the floor, that's the staff recommendation. Councillor Lochtenberg is making an amendment to the main motion. So that amendment would read, essentially the motion that's being put on the floor now, is that the main motion be amended so that it's subject to read, subject to the RDCK over the next 3 years, developing a suitable option for a long-term location, whether in the city or not, for consideration by council.
Okay, so we have a mover, we need a seconder for that.
Maybe it needs to say, sorry, if it is within the city of Nelson, it's for consideration of council. Because if it's outside the city,
Right.
it's not your authority.
Yeah.
Good point. You okay with that?
Yep.
So that's the mover. You've got that, Gabe?
I do.
And we need a seconder. Second by Councillor Page. So we're voting on the amendment. All in favour? Carried. Now we're going back to the main motion as amended. Right. All in favour? Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Done.
Thank you.
Get rid of that piece of paper. And the next one is silica, is,
It's the housekeeping.
yeah, let's see, 516 silica. This one here?
Just the housekeeping.
There we go, yeah, got that one. Okay, next one is the housekeeping bylaw amendment, and staff has identified 2 minor housekeeping amendments that must be made to the city bylaw, notice enforcement bylaw, and zoning bylaw. As described below, these amendments are necessary to ensure that the bylaws are clear and ambiguous to both staff and public. That'd be a first. Council is now requesting to adopt a bylaw notice enforcement amendment number 3509-2020 and a zoning amendment bylaw number 3510-2020. And it's all there in front of you folks, and there is a recommendation.
I'll move the recommendation.
Moved by Councillor Lochtenberg and seconded by Councillor Woodward that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Bylaw Notice Enforcement Amendment Bylaw number 3509-2020 be finally adopted. One at a time. All in favour? Carried. 2, that the Corporation of the City of Nelson Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 35
Move.
moved. Second. All in favour? And before we get to number 3, I made a note on this to Sebastian about setbacks. And I was reading through this and I was wondering where you, because part of what we were talking about here was, in here we grandfather existing portable structures. But you're suggesting we grandfather those portable structures regardless if they're set back properly or not?
Mayor, I might just jump in here. I don't think Sebastian was involved.
Oh, sorry,
with
okay,
this
I beg your
amendment.
pardon.
I wrote an amendment. I'd be happy to answer your question.
Yeah, okay, sorry, I beg your pardon. I know it came out of your office originally, but
It did.
the real brains are over here, right? Okay, Gabe.
Just to provide information, this was from the zoning amendment bylaw that was presented by Development Services. I believe it was
Right.
Alex Thune that headed that amendment up. And subsequent to that amendment being adopted, we did realize that there was a problem with the effective date.
right.
That's the nature of the amendment that is now being brought before council.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, or did you have a specific?
It does. I understand about the dates. That was the important thing. But I,
answer in terms of the setbacks,
But-
that wasn't being amended. Those setbacks have always been in place.
okay, but it does say in this document, I just want clarification, because I've been wrong before, once, I think. And it does say in this document here that every shelter that's in existence prior to this date is grandfathered in, as they stand, right?
No,
Okay,
they still have to meet our setbacks.
okay.
So if you had
I
one,
think we need to make that clear, because when I read this,
Yeah.
there are a number of them that aren't meeting the
No.
setbacks.
yeah, so those were never legal. They
Okay.
always had to meet our setbacks, and we had the right to ask those be located within the setback.
Sam, did you have something you wanted to add to this?
So, yeah, so I think, Sebastian, if I'm correct here, if you have an existing one, it's not in the setbacks, we'd say you need to move that back within your setbacks, or you have to remove it. That would be under our existing setback regulations. You always had to meet those setbacks.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it's similar to any other building. If somebody didn't build it with a permit and didn't have the proper setback, even though it's been there for a long time, it's still illegal. It's not
Okay.
non-conforming. So
Okay. Well, we're dealing mostly with the date here. I just want to be clear on that, because that was one of the reasons this whole thing came before us in the first place, was because a number of people had these structures, they'd reinforced them, rebuilt them, and a number of them are not meeting the setback regulations. And
Yeah.
somebody needs to be dealing with that.
So I think, again, I think I'm correct in either you need to get back within your setbacks if you're grandfathered, or you have to remove it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Gabe. All right. Move third. Do we have a mover for number 3?
We did.
Councillor Wright.
We're on the last one. We're on the, be finally adopted.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. And the next one is the, well, this is the other one that's missing, the Parkade bylaw. Could you give me that one? Parking bylaw? Okay, this one is the fees and changes amendment for the Parkade rates. And staff is proposing an amendment to the fees and charges bylaw in order to update the fees and charges at the Parkade. Council is now requested to provide the first of 3 readings for fees and charges amendment bylaw number 3511-2020. And there is a report with it, not on my computer, but part of it's here. And there is the recommendations number 1 and 2. And the first one says, moved by Councillor Page, seconded by Councillor Woodward, that the fees and charges amendment bylaw number 3511-2020 be introduced and read a first and second time by title only. All in favor? Thank you. Number 2, mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Renwick and Councillor Lochtenberg, that the fees and charges amendment bylaw number 3511-2020 be read a third time by title only. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Thanks, Sarah, for preparing that for me. Road closure. And we're once again, okay. Council on August the 17th, the 2020 regular meeting, Council passed a resolution to approve the permanent closure of a portion of Lake Street roadway along the south property line at 520 Front Street in order to allow for a portion of the roadway to be sold. In order to facilitate the sale, a portion of Lake Street road allowance must be permanently closed by bylaw. The Lake Street Road Closure Bylaw number 3507-2020 is now presented for adoption. So we've been through this, middle once.
Moved.
Councillor Renwick, second by Councillor Woodward. Questions or comments? Councillor Morrison, did you?
No.
You okay? All in favor? Carried. And the motion was the Corporation of the City of Nelson, Lakes Street Road Closure Bylaw number 3507-2020 finally adopted, which just happened. Next is the permissive tax exemption. And once again, as a result of Council's deliberations on the permissive tax exemption applications, presentations by selected applicants, and a workshop with staff, Council is now requesting to pass the first of 3 readings of permissive tax exemption number 3515-2020. And the first one is that Council passed the following resolution, that the permissive tax exemption bylaw number 2020 be introduced and read a first and second time by title only. Moved by Councillor Woodward and second by Councillor Renwick. All in favour?
And a question.
Oops, sorry, Councillor Page.
I'm just wondering about the Schedule A here, it being the schedule of a 10-year tax exemption for the years 2013 to 2022. Now, I know we're pushing this off until another year. That's my understanding. But
Yeah.
what is with this 10-year marking in here in
Colin,
2020?
you're up.
I'm here.
What does this mean?
They're different.
Yeah, so it's sort of like the fees and charges bylaw that you just passed, where you have many different sort of schedules. And so even though a schedule may be in there, it hasn't changed. There will be only certain schedules that are changing.
Okay.
So it's sort of part of the bylaw. It's sort of been there for a while. Those properties have had a 10-year because there's no expectation to ever have them come to be taxed. And so they stay on that list. And my goal would be when they come due that we would then do another 10-year on top of that.
Okay.
But the rest of the schedules will have been the ones that changed, Councillor.
Thank you.
So at the end of the day, this is being pushed out for 1 year. All right.
Yeah, just I think that people
Councillor
need to
Morrison.
understand is that normally this would be done and we would be looking at giving these PTEs for 4 years has been
Right.
what we've done in the past. And I think that the public probably might not be aware that we're only doing these for 1 year because of the number of developments and such that are in place in the city currently, and that we want to make sure that we're doing the appropriate job with the PTE because this is a tax exemption, and we want to make sure that if we are giving them, that they're fair and equitable and minimize the impact to our city taxpayers.
Thank you. Very good. Okay, all in favour, number 1? Carried, thank you. Number 2, that the permissive tax exemption bylaw 35/2020 be read a third time by title only. Moved by Councillor Page and second by Councillor Morrison. All in favour? Carried, thanks very much.
Just if I
Mayor, if I could just make one comment. Just due to the holiday today, we had planned to have this come back at us.
Day 2? I thought that was...
This week. So yes, so with the holiday making it a shorter week, we did not make the cutoff for getting this into the paper for this week, but we will have it for next week, and then we are going to have adoption, kind of a special meeting we're meeting already on October 30th, so we're going to bring it back at that meeting. It was planned to be at a special meeting after the cow, but just because we won't have made that deadline for the paper, we're just going to push that till the 30th, just so council's aware.
Colin, just a question on that. In the communication through the paper, will you be explaining the rationale for doing a 1-year PTE as opposed to the typical?
Yeah, great question, Councillor Altenberg. No, we will not. It's very, as far as what the charter asks us to do, that is what we will do, which is the name of the property, the location of the property, and the estimation of what the property tax is.
Okay.
If anyone has any questions, they are more than welcome to communicate with the city staff, and we would have any conversations about that. Certainly hoping here, like we see we've got media today, and there's been some of the discussions about this already. So I think I'm hoping that there'll be a follow-up potentially on what's happening there. You know, I'm also hoping that, you know, our community, you know, joins council, reads the RFDs, is watching online. So.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
And keep in mind, we have the full package we're talking about here, just not individual ones. We're talking about the full package that we're moving on.
Yeah, I was just, more it was a question about, this is unusual that we're doing a 1 year, and I was just asking more about the communication around that 1 year.
Right. Thank you, yeah, good
So we
point.
can, if you want us to communicate, we can do a media release. We can put it out on our Facebook. If you want more communication in addition, that's not what we've done in the past, but obviously, if council feels it's important to communicate this, we would communicate it through our normal communication channels.
Sure.
I think so.
And it'll be picked up by various, you know, Facebook groups and the Nelson Star and Nelson Daily and so on, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Onward and upward. Okay, the council procedure bylaw. And this one is back after a number of conversations back and forth and ideas and suggestions as to how we can better prepare this bylaw. And thanks, Gabriel, for all your good work on bringing this together. Councilors requested to pass the third reading of council procedure bylaw number 3491-2020, which incorporates most of the changes previously presented to council by staff, along with additional changes requested by council, and also addresses a number of housekeeping issues found in the current procedure bylaw, which was the start of the whole thing off in the first place. And having said all that, there's a full package of the changes and the bylaw itself, and there is a staff recommendation, and if somebody wishes to move that, that'd be
I'll move
terrific.
it.
Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Renwick. Councillor Morrison, any comments? Are you okay?
No, I think that it looks to me like all of that I heard from the last meeting, concerns that were either raised by councillor staff have been addressed. I think staff has done a fulsome job here in going through. I don't know, there's like 20 at least items that needed to be reconsidered. And so, yeah, I'm happy to hopefully see this move forward.
Thank you. Councillor Page, you got anything you wanted to?
Yeah, I got
Say?
some.
Anything there?
So I think everything that's left on here is really just discussions for council in terms of whether or not we agree with staff in terms of this being our procedural bylaw. So I'll try and start with the most important ones, and then when you guys get tired of me, someone will cut me off, I'm sure.
So many of these could you have cleared up with Gabriel before tonight, is there?
Well,
You okay?
I do think these end up, staff has talked about these.
Yeah, okay.
And agreed that they have a position that works for them, and this is more of a discussion of, do we think that works for us? I wanted to start with just the notice of motions, that they should require a vote. I did a little bit of research in terms of, I have North Cowichan has a notice of motion policy that doesn't require voting. The Regional District of Durham, Ontario, envisions notice of motions also without voting. And the McGill University, same thing, notice of statements are a notice of intent, so you don't vote on them. So I think we need to consider that if there are notice of motions coming forward, that they are not things that we vote on. We have opportunities, when the notice still comes to the next meeting, you still need a seconder. There's already a gap there, but in terms of, like in Cowichan's, notice of motions are submitted in writing, they have a date before the agenda, and they have to align with strategic priorities laid out by the city. Like, that's how they manage it, and I think there's other ways we can contain this. I just think when it comes to notice of motions, it is pretty established rules of procedure that these are not things we vote on. So, that's one.
Gabe,
I
do
think
you have
it's clear from what staff said, this is just creating some discipline in your system that, you don't, as I think Councillor Page said, others have, they must be these things to meet that standard. And right now, we're leaving that up to council to determine whether they meet that level of standard. And that's really all we're doing, is if council feels it has enough legs to meet that standard, that it's strategic, it's whatever, then you'd put up your hands and say, yep, I think we should have a look at that. If you don't think it meets that standard, right now we don't have another process to do that. And if that's something you want us to look at in the future, then we can do that.
Councillor Lucknower.
Yeah, so I obviously highlighted this one before too, and my question or concern around this one was that when you subject to something for a vote, there will be a discussion, and that sort of gives the person who's bringing forward that notice of motion sort of a leg up in those discussions. So they'll be the only ones who are prepared for it, and will be able to sort of guide the focus of the discussion. But then after talking to Kevin and staff, and I think Gabe might have been in on that conversation too, it does seem it's a tough one, right? Like, at some point you have to decide whether or not something moves forward. And the risk obviously was that if we had nobody here, but at some future council, that somebody just kept dumping things in notices of motion. How do you control that? You could give staff the ability and say, okay, here's the criteria, but then staff's going to be sort of overruling a councillor, which you can imagine would create problems. And so I kind of did sort of fall back to this, I guess the vote of a majority of council is probably the only way to manage that concern. It's good to hear that there are other ways of doing it, but it still kind of gets back to that: does staff override a councillor, or ultimately is that sort of the role of a majority of council to do that? notice of motion.
Well, may I?
Yeah, yeah.
So on this one, I think where you fall into a trap is if you've got a contingent that believes they understand an issue and you vote something down with ever really hearing debate or having a fulsome discussion on it, and then the issue never simply moves forward because nobody wants to have the conversation, but you get someone to second it to have the debate, you have the debate and the thing is over. So it's more about that partisanship that can develop, be it on this council or a future council, to actually have a discussion if there's two members on the board that want to have the discussion.
Just a point of clarification on this one, though, if you bring forward a notice of motion, there will be an opportunity for debate at the time the council votes on that notice of motion. The concern was it's kind of a debate that's not informed by sort of staff preparation, but ultimately,
Just moving it forward.
it's just sort of moving it ahead.
Now you're just motions.
Yeah.
You're just late items at that point.
Yeah.
All you would be debating is whether or not, you wouldn't be debating the actual notice of motion, only whether or not it would go to the next meeting.
Right.
Okay, or
but-
onto the agenda,
Yeah.
not the details of the notice of motion.
Yeah, except for the concern I had, or the question I had, was how would you effectively have that debate? Because you have to decide, does this motion move forward? It seems to me you would inevitably get into the details of it. You can sort of manage to try to stay high level.
Wouldn't you be supplying that information ahead of time?
Yeah, as the person who's bringing
Yeah.
forward the notice of motion.
So that should be enough to allow council to decide if it moves forward.
Yeah. That's why ultimately, after sort of weighing this out, I did sort of fall back to staff's recommendation on this because I couldn't unravel it. It
Yeah.
seemed like you're going to have it anyways. At what point do you have it? And
The notice is to give everyone heads up that there will be in the future a motion.
Right.
yeah, but you can sort of kind of filter that conversation so it's not, like, as Sarah's saying, it's not fully deep into the contents. It's like, does this sort of pass the first gate? And like Cowichan, for example, has its first gate being something that staff controls probably, to say, well, you haven't ticked off these items. In this case, it's sort of leaving that power in council to do it. To say, well, I'm not going to vote on whether I agree or not. I'm going to vote whether this sort of meets that criteria.
Okay.
Councillor Page, I'm just thinking about the most democratic situation, and I think, we're put here by the public to move things forward democratically as a council. It's not really staff's responsibility. It's our right that's this grouping of people right now.
Yeah.
But this grouping of people will change next election, but that's the democratic process. So I just feel like it should remain in this arena because we were voted to be put here to make
That's what, no,
Can we, thank you, can we narrow this down a minute, because I see a lot of flipping
Yeah.
purple
there's not that many.
markers on
Some
the
of
page
them
of
are
yours
just,
here.
some of them are just seconded. They're just,
Do you ever, had you got 2 cents to throw at this here, or are you okay?
Ultimately, I think the original thought was simply that this mechanism would ensure that a majority of council is setting the agenda, and not any individual councillor. And I do agree with the comments around the table about that's not necessarily appropriate for staff, and we thought this struck a nice balance. I think you'll see that there are other changes that were recommended, especially, for example, with regards to the late item. We did, hear council on that one, and I think that what we end up with is a nice balance. So those are my only comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay?
okay. Move on to an easier one, hopefully. See how that goes. So 719, sectioner, corporate officer shall not record names of the mover and the seconder. For this one, I know the rationale put forward is that it's been our practice and it provides transparency. And I just want to read a quick little bit from Eli Millen, a board consultant down in Vancouver, which starts with the principles of objective in mind, minutes and meetings should be of a collective focus and not a personal focus. It is therefore important to record the group's collective actions and, if needed, an objective point-form summary of the discussion without attributing specific comments to individuals. With this objectivity in mind, there's a piece of advice that may surprise you at first, but hopefully will make sense as you read on. Names of movers and seconders should not be recorded in the minutes. Let me start with a seconder. The individual seconding a motion does so only to get the motion debated, and not necessarily because he or she favors it. In fact, a person may second a motion because he or she opposes it and would like to see it formally rejected. Recording his or her name next to the motion would give a false impression. Further, the current edition of the Roberts Rules, newly revised, states the name of the seconder of a motion should not be recorded in the minutes, and it continues on. So for the rationale of transparency, I think when I put forward that we shouldn't record movers and seconders, it is for that objective of the table, that collective objective, as opposed to a personal objective. And the fact that if we come to the table with an open heart and mind in terms of the content, being movers and seconders on the debate can completely change that by simply just knowing that it happened allows a little bit more of an objective focus when we're doing these things at the debate, and cleans up the minutes in that regard, because we have staff and we know they were moved and seconded and the debate was had.
So,
So the transparency argument.
so you're talking about taking the name off who moved. Of course, in an open meeting, I know that Janice moved it and Cal seconded, as an example. So you're saying by taking the name away, that changes everything that they just did?
It's just it's a principled point on how we record things and what kind of discussions we're having. Yes. Which is considered a best practice, and which is why
Well, by
boards are
that
moving
person,
this direction.
by that person,
By this person and the new Roberts Rules of Revised Orders.
right?
Yeah, like it's the direction things are moving in.
Okay. Councillor Lochtenberg.
I want to say, I think Councillor Page is bang on this one. It seems to me it's going to be easier, so it's going to kind of tighten up our process. We won't have to be like, hey, Sarah, who seconded that one? And, you know, that little bit, so it's small, but
Well, we need to have some structure there.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. Could you please repeat?
Siri will give you the
Siri-
definitive answer.
Did
Yeah,
Siri just tell you they're giving you cash back? Is that what you said?
I'm not, for the reasons Councillor Page said, I think, the staff still have to make sure there's
Yeah,
a
some structure to it.
legally moved in second, and, make sure they can back that up. So I think that piece, but I hear the other piece of, especially the point that, I might second that to actually want to get it defeated. And
Yeah.
it might look different. Today's digital world, people are really interested. They can pull up
one of
that debate.
Terms I've heard in the past is, as an example, a person, say Councillor Morrison may say, I'll second this to get it on the floor.
Sure.
As an example. So that doesn't mean you're seconding it because you approve of it,
Yeah.
but it means you're seconding it for debate, which you may not approve. But I personally don't care one way or the other, but it just seems to me it makes more sense for Sarah to have, okay, it was moved and seconded by whomever. Minutes.
I think it's a bit of a check and balance for us when we're doing the minutes. And so we know for sure that, who has moved and who has seconded something. It is because often, particularly when there's only one of us taking minutes, we're not watching, right? Yeah. And it also secures in the minutes that somebody has moved and seconded, it's recorded.
I was gonna add to that, because I feel like what we're doing here by removing this, Councillor Page, is that we're saying, if we want to find out who seconded it, or put it on the floor, that means the staff has to go back and look at the recording, because it's there. Whereas if it's just noted, it's noted. So you're actually adding a layer of work for staff that's not necessary, because it's already a public record right now. Whatever decision we make now is public record. So it's already recorded.
But it's a collective, if I may there.
Yeah.
But it's a collective discussion. None of us owns the decision. None of us owns the discussion. And that's why it's misleading when it's in the minutes that a particular individual becomes the proponent of the thing that is moved. And to a certain degree, it's about slowing down and the presiding member's responsibility to make sure we're moving at a pace that allows that to happen, as opposed to just breezing past and catching these things on the other side. But it's a principled point. I didn't expect it.
No, that's fair enough. I just think that somebody,
Anyone reading the minutes that wasn't part of the debate.
so in this day and age, we record it here, and nowadays it's recorded up there. So somebody knows that Janice moved it and you seconded it, right?
Yeah, but how
Regardless
long
of-
until you can't access this because the
Well,
technology's changed?
I don't know. I
That's its own ball of wax.
I don't think it makes that much difference one way or the other, but I think if Sarah would prefer to have it, it is so.
Okay, and my
We'll
final.
yield to Sarah, to that, right? Whew, thanks, Sarah.
Now that I've warmed you up, my final one.
Okay.
I really disagree with the verbal report section. I think, again, I will say this again, there are all sorts of modalities, and restricting council reports to only verbal reports, I think, puts us in a peg where we're only expecting a certain kind of skill set at the table. And so it is our expectation and elsewhere that council reports can be written and they can be provided verbally. I do not think the administrative burden of having to have a report in a week early so it can be part of an agenda package is something that we need to be saying you can only provide your council report as a speech.
What sections are you talking about?
So you would, so
4.5.
4.45.
you would suggest just striking verbal from that?
Yep.
Then why don't you put that forward as an amendment and
Okay, then I would,
I just said that was the last one.
yeah, no, well, that's the
Okay.
last one.
So you're moving that.
I would like to move it as amendment that we strike the word verbally.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
There was a time actually that we had to bring written reports,
So,
or not.
clarification, so then now all reports are to be written and
No, you
not
have the
given
option.
verbally?
No, it's just an option.
It's
That
an
there are
option.
council reports. Because right now, it's prescriptive. It's like you will provide a verbal report.
So it could be written
Oh, so,
slash
okay,
verbal.
well, normally I give both, because normally I give them,
Yeah.
You
So we
give them
could
a
have,
written report,
excuse me, we could have both words in there, verbal
or
or,
just
or none, just
Or
strike
none.
it.
do a video report.
okay, reports, yeah.
might be a dance, who knows?
Might be this, yeah.
I like it, an interpretive report.
Okay, thank you. Are you okay now?
Are we going to vote on the amendment?
Absolutely.
I'll
Okay.
move the amendment.
Thanks for taking the time to doing that. for doing
I'll
that.
second the striking of the word verbal.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. Good.
Okay.
Main motion? Let me find the darn thing again. As amended, yeah, let me find this. Here we go. Just so I make sure I'm on the right one. Okay, okay, voting on the main motion as amended. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Third reading.
What do you expect from the library book guy? Like, this is what we do. This is what they're doing over at the library right now.
party now.
I do want to commend Councillor Page on research, and
Yeah.
looking, and that's good.
And in lots of
Definitely.
jurisdictions, they don't record the mover and the seconder.
Yeah, they've won that one already.
Yeah.
We'll get that next year.
And so
We'll do the procedural bylaw update.
we found some obscure town in the middle of nowhere.
And this is,
That's what they did.
this is the way you guys decide to do business. It's
Basically
important
living in the
it
past.
fits.
All right, good. Onward and upward. Notice on title of 516 Silica. City of Nelson Development Service Engineering Department issued a building permit, number BP 150804 on August the 5th, 2015 to renovate a garage. The building permit is now expired and the owner ultimately converted the garage to a laneway home without revising the permit or having any inspections. Many deficiencies have been identified from which there is life and safety concerns. Council has now requested to pass a resolution directing staff to file notice on the title of the property according to section 57 of the community charter. And there's a full report from our staff. Thank you very much for that. And there's a staff recommendation.
I'll move the recommendation.
Second by Councillor Renwick, moved by Councillor Morrison. You okay with your name being on there?
We have the opponents here who. Yeah,
Okay, we have, first of all, let's deal with this before we go any further. We have a move by Councillor Morrison, second by Councillor Renwick. And we open, it's up to council if you, yeah. Okay, and if you wish to speak, you have to let us know who you are, where you live, and you can sit right there.
All right. The property is Roseanne Cordeska. I'm
Yes.
her partner.
Yeah.
I'm being a registered builder with Homeowner Protection, and so if I can, I'd like to just explain a little bit about what's happening with the property.
Do we?
Yes, you can sit down.
The toughest thing has been getting a hold of an engineer, because I met with Sam last week and he let me know there's a couple of things about the building, the way it was built, that we need to qualify on, and we've called engineers. Part of the issue here is that it seems like we initially applied for a building permit recently. We haven't been able to fulfill all those things in the time allowed. We've tried to get a hold of engineers and no one's returning our phone calls because they're so busy. We finally got someone today and he said in 3 weeks he'll come and do it. And it's basically a question about, given the size of the building, the angle of the roof, is there collar ties needed or not? There's a spiral staircase in the building, which we've found out is illegal, and we're going to be replacing that. There's a bunch of other issues close to proximity to a property line, and so there's a fire issue there. Sam let me know what needs to be done there, and I'm going to do that. Because the building is set down a little bit from the ground level, there's a radon issue or a question. I've got the testing done, everything's fine there. So it's been a matter of, he's given me a list of the things that needs to be done, and we're moving through those. And I guess there's been a question of, because we're not moving through those fast enough, or we haven't directly gone after all the issues to get the building permit off and running, there's the possibility of putting a notice on title on the property. So, which, with the difficulty we've had in trying to get a structural engineer, which was Sam's recommendation, was we need to deal with the bigger things first before we can pull some siding off to make sure if the framing's okay, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So just so I'm clear here,
Yeah.
and I imagine everybody else has got a bit of a handle on it, but in 2015 you got a permit to renovate, Roseanne, you did, to renovate the garage. In the meantime, you decided to make it into a laneway house without a permit. You didn't come back to get a building permit to make it into a lane. So that's really what we're talking about here, is that you went ahead and renovated a site into a laneway house that you hadn't made a request to do that.
Yes.
And of course, Sam's responsibility then, of course, is to talk to you about why you went ahead and did all this work without getting a permit. So now we have to put a notice of motion on your property because of that to get you to conform.
Yes.
And you're giving us a description of when you can get that done. It really doesn't matter how it happened. What actually happened is what happened. You got a permit for a garage and built a laneway house,
Yes.
right? So you're talking now about moving forward to get those,
Whatever we need
to
to do
address that?
to just have it all legal and exactly the way it's supposed to be.
right?
So we've had an electrician come in and certify that it's fine and to code. We've had a plumber come in who's also certified that it's to code. So it's really just getting the structural engineer in, to just to make sure that the collar ties are okay.
Yeah.
So we are moving forward, although it did just take a little bit of time just to get all of the
Right.
dots in an order.
So the motion to notice of title will be put on your property on such times as you are conforming and they'll be taken off,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So there really doesn't seem to be a problem here then, right?
No,
If you're gonna bring it up
understand.
to a standard, then the notice will be taken off.
Yeah,
So Sam, I think you need to throw your 2 cents worth in here, please, if you don't mind. Thank you, thank you,
Thank
thank you, yeah.
So, I mean, there is a cost to remove the notice on title. It's $500.
Yeah.
You know, the reason we do notices on title is to protect the city and all the other taxpayers of liability. There was an option given to, and I get it, it's difficult to request that the tenant leave in the short term. I don't think that's happened. No. So, I mean, the concern for me at this point is there's been some time given to try to get this in order. It hasn't happened. And so the concern would be that there's further delays and, you know, the situation just continues. And we have to just, I guess, make a decision of when we're going to say, okay, we'll put the notice on. You continue the process and then apply to have it removed. The council can give more time as well if they feel that it's
So
appropriate.
you think that's reasonable, like $500 to allow you to continue then?
Yes.
So, okay, so council could pass this resolution and this project would get developed and conform to the building code, right, Sam?
Yeah, and I'm happy to continue to work to make that happen. It's just that I think at some point we have to demonstrate that we're being careful, right?
Okay, well, Roseanne and both of you, thanks very much for coming in tonight and giving us a
Yes,
bit of
thank
an
you.
update. And-
Yep, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so there is a recommendation here, folks, and it's up to yourselves. We got a mover and a seconder. Name, yeah, you got their names there? All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Thank you. All right. Okay, we have 111 Stibb Street, register at notice of title, consequence of a building bylaw contravention. Okay,
I'll move this recommendation.
moved by Councillor Morrison. I'm just making sure I'm on the right one here because we have two in a row. Yes, I am. Okay, the recommendations of the Corporation of the City of Nelson be directed to file a notice with the Land Title and Survey Authority of British Columbia stating that the resolution has been made in accordance with Section 57 of the Community Charter by the City of Nelson relating to land of 111 Stibb Street, Nelson, legally described as Lot B, District Lot 304, District Plan NEP 78811. I won't give you the rest of those numbers, there's too many. And further, if an active building permit or building application is in place, that it be cancelled. And finally, that the information respecting the resolution may be inspected at the office of the City of Nelson on normal working days during regular office hours.
I moved it,
you
but
moved
I also want to speak once we had a
Okay,
seconder.
and we had Councillor Renwick, Councillor Morrison.
So, I hate to say it, but I think we might have to bring this back, because when I was reading this, and unfortunately due to the changeover of the email system, that we did invite the owner of this property to come to a meeting, and unfortunately the date that we sent them to come to this meeting is October the 13th, 2021. So the proponent probably read that, and good, bad, or indifferent, the date on their invitation was incorrect. So I don't know what staff's position is, but I'm thinking that we might have to move this 1 month so that this letter could be resent with a date in this calendar year for the proponent to attend at their pleasure. If they don't want to attend, then that's the decision of the proponent. As we can see, the previous proponent came and spoke, which is important for us to hear. Yeah. So I'm thinking referral is actually required at this point, but I'd be interested to hear what staff have to say.
Yeah, very good question.
Were you able?
Yeah, come on, Sam, you want to come on. But that won't change the date, by the way.
No.
No.
So, I mean, there's no doubt there's an error. I'm not opposed, if it has to go to next month's meeting. The only, what I can say with this one is that this was to go to notice quite some time ago. And, she wrote in asking for an extension. We gave her 60 days. It's been almost a year.
And I realize that, and
That's it.
The life of limb does concern me.
Yeah.
Because I know that there's a number of substandard rental accommodations within the city of Nelson, of which I've been in, that don't have egress from bedrooms. As a person that works in healthcare and a person that worked in a burn unit, egress from any room is very important to me. So it's not like I want to delay this for any particular reason, but I think that with a letter that goes out, if the proponent had wished to attend, they might have taken that at face value.
So we sent this registered?
Sam, we concur, and we'll do that.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, go.
Sam, sorry, I read through this and was, I'm struggling with the timeline a bit in that I guess my question is, this homeowner purchased the property but didn't know, because there's nothing on record about the deficiencies, correct?
No, I think, no, she had the home built and it was never, completed correctly.
I think we're talking about a different.
From 2006?
This one she bought, she purchased it.
Yeah.
Oh, right,
Bought
that's
it
correct, yeah,
unknowingly.
you're right, you're correct, sorry,
Yeah.
Warren, this fellow, Mr. Fisher built it originally.
Right.
and then- and
So-
then-
Make
Yeah,
a
sorry,
motion to
yeah.
send this
So she didn't know, and I guess what we're doing here now, with the notice, protects homeowners moving forward, where that protection wasn't there at the time?
Correct, yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So, Councillor Renwick, Councillor Morrison's gonna make a recommendation that this be sent back to staff so that the proponent has some clear indication that the opportunity for them to come and speak will be the next regular meeting.
And I don't
Yes,
think,
so we're
yeah, I
gonna-
don't think.
That's
it
what
needs to go
Janice is
back.
gonna do.
Yeah, so I'll withdraw that. I just wanted to make sure I got to speak first.
Yeah,
So as the mover, I withdraw the previous, but I would like referral back to staff.
back to staff, okay. So you're making a motion to refer back to staff? All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
Problem.
Sam.
See you next month.
All right.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, Sam.
On a side note of that, that's a really good example why, as a home purchaser, you need to do your homework and make sure proper building permits have been taken out, et cetera, et cetera.
Finalized. That's the key, that there's nothing on the title, on the permit. Thanks, Sam. All right, onward and upward, the 2021 Sports Ambassador update. And the council adopted a Sports Ambassador policy in 2019, which resulted in the appointment of Nelson's first ever Sports Ambassador. Council is now requested to approve the staff proposal that council serve as the jury to select the 2021 Sports Ambassador. And that's based on the COVID situation we're in. And there is a recommendation down below, folks, and moved by Councillor Renwick, second by Councillor Woodward. All in favor? Carried, okay. That the council resolve to receive the 2021 Sports Ambassador applications and select the 2021 Sports Ambassador. That's what's gonna happen. So the applications come directly to us and we'll deal with them from there on. And hopefully, following year, it'll go back to where it started, so. Councillor Morrison, you want to?
Just if I may, so just for people that are listening in, is that this date is closing on October the 30th. So if you're an organization or an individual that knows a worthy person to represent the city of Nelson, please make sure that you're getting that application in. And if you need further information, they can contact which staff person?
They can contact myself, the Deputy Corporate Officer.
Okay, there you go. Deputy Corporate Officer, if you have any questions, because the time is moving, moving on. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Morrison. Onward and upward to the library grant application. Council has submitted a grant application on the community culture and recreation infrastructure funding stream for the proposed library project. The deadline for the grant was October 1st with a grace period of 1 month to submit council resolution endorsement and the grant application. Council is now requested to pass the required resolution to complete the grant application. And there is a recommendation from staff to,
Here she goes.
that council directs staff to submit an application for grant funding for the Nelson Public Library new facility through the Invest in Canada Infrastructure Program and the Community Culture, Recreation, and further that council support the project and commit to its share of $3,703,983 for the project.
I'll move it to take credit for it, so.
Moved, seconded, moved by Councillor Page, second by Councillor Woodward. did you have a question, Councillor Page?
I am wondering if we should, if it would be appropriate to refer this to our 26th meeting at the special, because, and I'm just noticing this, I thought it was an omission, but I'm reading in the attachments here, that there should have been a library design package, as well as a fact sheet on the confirmation of funds, and a note 4 for accumulated surpluses, but none of that was actually in the agenda. We only have the 2 cover pages for the library report and nothing else. I thought it was.
If that's what is on iCompass, then that would be my mistake, and I apologize. I wasn't made aware of it until now.
And I only noticed it the other day. So, given that, I'm just wondering if we should be pushing this to a discussion on Monday, 2 weeks from now.
Will we miss any of the deadlines, Kevin?
Well, I guess we can fit it in there. I think council's seen the whole design package presented to council. If you want to see the, where we've allocated the reserve funds at this stage, we can certainly give you that we can print that off right now. So I don't, unless someone.
It's a $3 million commitment.
Yeah. Well, the design has been presented to council a few times now, so I think council's well aware of the design. As far as the, right now, we had to show that we have reserves that could fund the council's share. That doesn't, those, in my mind, are placeholders. Our intent would be, I know the CBT funded the Caslo Library to $3 million. So we'd hope that we can not have to use all those reserves. We just needed to prove, in order for this application to be considered by the feds or the province, I guess, there's managing this fund, that you have capacity without, to do that. But we can certainly, if you want to see where we earmark that for now and shown that capacity, we can certainly print that off for you now.
Is that what Sarah's doing?
As far as the design, we've submitted the design. There's no chance to come back on the design.
And I appreciate that. I think we've seen a lot of conceptual pieces, some PowerPoints. I was suspecting we would see some meat on the bones in terms of what we sent in for the grant application. This would be that opportunity. But
we could just for a second, can we just leave this for a few minutes? I think Sarah's going to get that, and we can come back. And
we can't be expected to read it today.
Pardon me?
It's just the one schedule. If people want to see the whole design again, I don't know if there's anything different than was presented in the past.
I don't have a problem with what you're saying, and I think you're dead right. I'm just a bit concerned about the timing, like the time frame, that's all. That's the only thing.
We have no capacity to change that design, so if council's reconsidering withdrawing this, then fair enough, delay it. If council's committed to this, and all I can say at this stage, the money side are placeholders now. You definitely have the reserves to be able to do this.
If we needed to, Kevin, if we needed more clarification on the funding, on the security of that funding, then
we'll print that right now.
Yeah, we'll print it right now. If that's not satisfactory to council, then we'll have to set this back and decide, okay, we either can or can't do it. Councillor Lochtenberg?
So, what would the deadline for the Canada Infrastructure Program is what? It's 30th.
Yeah.
We have 30 days from the date of submitting it to get a council resolution.
Got it. Okay,
so that's where
it's
we're
from
at.
The first, so it's the deadline of the 30th.
Yeah.
And so, question for Councillor Page: You're concerned about the source of funding? Is that the primary concern?
This would be the appropriate opportunity for the public transparency piece. So we've seen things, but of course the public has seen conceptual pieces as they move forward, but they have not seen what we have actually applied for in the grant. We have sent in the grant, but we have not seen, as CAO Carmack has just said, he doesn't know if there is a difference between what we have been conceptually presented versus what has actually been put into the grant process itself. So these documents are missing from this meeting, from this agenda package. I don't envision us changing the grant application. Of course, it's already in, but I think from a transparency standpoint, it makes sense for us to simply wait until we have the full package in front of us. But if these are if we're just talking about these.
Thanks, Sarah.
Because understanding, the design and the meat of the application hasn't changed from what we saw. It's the source of funding in terms of our potential contribution might be the one thing we didn't have. Is that right? Or is there something?
No, the design is the one that was presented at the UBCM. I think we're only a few days away from submitting it. What I was saying earlier, if you want to see the detail of the application, the rationale, all those sorts of things, we can certainly make that available. But we can certainly walk through the financials at this stage.
Yeah, let's do, if this is, are these all that was missing from the document then? This is what makes,
Yeah, we had to, this application is massive.
Sure.
And there's, you name it, we had to answer questions from 100 different sort of aspects of this. What the community benefit mostly is what they're primarily getting at, but they also want to make sure that you have financial capacity to
Back it up.
back it up. So as I said, this is a placeholder. So as you can see, the
Kevin, just make sure you're reading off, let
Sure.
everybody know what page you're reading
we're
off here.
on, we're on the financial page. It's called Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program Confirmation of Fund Summary Sheet. So that starts with the project cost. Is everybody on that? Estimated project cost of $13,888,200. Everybody found that
The total
number?
project.
Yeah.
Right.
Total ineligible costs, where there are no ineligible costs. The grant is up to 73%. So that's the $10,184,217. So that leaves the city of Nelson having to fund the balance, $3,703,983. Everybody following that so far?
Yep.
Okay, so now we had to show how would we fund that if we didn't find other sources of funding. So what we looked at was doing some borrowing under section 175 of the community charter. That means that's a 5-year borrowing period. You don't have to go to alternative approval for that. Our intent would be to pay that debt off with the water license reserve. It's about $280,000 a year that would go to service that debt over that 5-year period. And then the balance we would fund from existing reserves. The Fortis Reserve is the reserve that was created through the LILO, and as I think Deputy CAO McClure mentioned, that is coming up, and that will retire this year.
Kevin,
and
just let the, for the public's sake, just tell us what LILO is.
Sure. The LILO deal was where this,
Briefly as possible.
yeah, where the city at one time owned the gas distribution system in the city of Nelson, and they had a right to purchase that back at fair market value. The agreement was coming up for renewal. I think it was BC Gas at the time when this started. I think by the time it ended, it was Terracing Gas, and that subsequently became Fortis BC. So we have this agreement with Fortis. They wanted to remove that provision. City of Nelson and a number of other municipalities said, we think that has some value. We're not willing to remove that at no value, just strike it from the agreement. So we came up with this complicated agreement called a lease in, lease out. We leased it back. That becomes a capital asset, so it ends up on our books. We borrowed against that to pay this off, and Fortis BC operates that and pays us for that right, which paid off both the debt and made a return to the city. That's coming due. That's how we built the NDCC. That's how we bought this building. That's how we created touchstones, all that through that deal. And not only that, we financed it short-term instead of long-term. So since interest rates have dropped substantially over that time, the deal I think was at 6.5%. We actually ended up financing it primarily around 2%. So not only did we take that money up front, invested in make these facilities happen, we're also going to be net ahead of another million and a half on the deal. So that's created this reserve fund from just not agreeing to strike a few words in an agreement. And so we would take $1 million of that dollars, $1,003,983. That's what we'd draw down that reserve. And finally, when we sold, Front and Hall Street there to the developer at the time, we sold that for $1 million instead of giving that land away free. So now you have $1 million to invest into another capital project. There's some other land sales we've had, so again, we would take that reserve. And I think the last page there shows you all our reserves amounts, and you can see what the balances were in 2019. You will notice if you go down to the Fortis reserve that it's only at 577,000. That's because that deal gets paid out in 2020. Yeah, gets paid out this year. So there's another $1.5 million, I believe, that will come into that reserve account. So that's how we propose, as a last resort, how we would fund our share, and hopefully we will secure other funds. Sebastian promised me that he would get at least $2 more million, and I think he's well on his way. That's the financial side.
Councillor Lockenberg and Councillor Woodward.
But it also seems to me this doesn't include revenue from the sale of the units. Am I missing something?
Right. At this stage, we have not accounted for that. This deal, we had to be really clear that, this grant was for the library only, and we really had to differentiate whether that housing was part of this or not. We chose to say this can be standalone if necessary. Our hope is still, our plan is still to build that housing above it. Council hasn't made a decision on whether it's market or subsidized to some extent. But again, I think, at least on the staff's original vision, was that there would be some profits from that. That would go into paying that down. So we haven't accounted for that at this stage. Council makes that decision. We're hoping that there would be positive revenues coming from the sale of units to help pay this debt as well.
That airspace, without putting anything on it, has value.
Correct.
Right? So it's airspace.
So,
Councillor Woodward.
thank you, Mayor. So, I mean, if all things work out, this sounds like it could be expense neutral. And if we get the grants, if other, like you pointed out in the agenda package, that about the Castle Library and CBT funding. So it could be that I mean, on paper, it looks like it's, we're talking 3 million, 3,700,000, but you're saying that might not be the case.
Yeah, we're hoping we don't have to, borrow and draw down the way it is. I would characterize this as the worst case scenario.
Right.
And even that is, you're actually, many municipalities gave those pieces of land away for nothing, like a Hall Street, Front and Hall Street. That's why we've been really, adamant, don't give stuff away, because, that $1 million is really key to another project you want to make happen. And guess what? The province did fund it and purchase it, and that worked out. The Fortis BC Lilo thing, again, we could have just, struck that line out and not spent a bunch of time on money and consultants and all those other things, but it created tremendous value. Not only might it fund a new library, it also funded a rec center, museum, and indirectly the purchase of this building.
But we could all, I mean, you're also saying in a really good situation, we're actually be revenue positive because of possibility of housing units.
Correct. And creating a taxation base on top of it. Yeah.
If you, in this world, of course, if you could build a new building like was proposed for 3,700,000, you'd build it. But be careful what you say about government. This is government is dealing with this here, so it's a little different in the private sector as well. So we have those opportunities to get some of those
And everyone knows the sustainability things that were built into this. This not only is mass timber, local employment, local technology. It's also, we're looking at using, moving ahead with district energy that we're applying for another grant for. So there's a whole lot more than a library in this building.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Page, you
So-
started this whole thing.
Yep, that's my job. So given that, we've got attachments 2 and 3, how many pages are we talking about in the design package? Or is this the design package, this one page? Is
So
the
Sebastian had sent that to one of you. So you could certainly email it to everyone if you want. I think it's 20, 30 pages.
I'm just wondering, we were talking about having a meeting to deal with, at the special, to deal with some of the requests coming off of Baker Street. Do we just simply want to push this decision forward and have a meeting when we have a full package?
I'm sorry, you lost me there.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Earlier, about the patios.
About the what, sorry?
About the patios, like, we've
Oh, I
already
see,
envisioned
yeah.
having a few more meetings even just before the 26th, and I suspect strongly that, given how great this project is, we're probably just gonna, and the grant's already in, so it's a yay or nay anyway. But I just think it's appropriate that we have the full package when we make the decision for the 3 million.
It's up to council if you want to go down that road. Go ahead,
I
Councillor
just,
Morrison.
Did mention to them that we would have it mid-month because we were bringing this to council at this date.
Right.
So my preference would be to follow through. I mean, at this point in time, the design is, like Kevin mentioned, is, well designed. I guess. I mean, there's not much that I think should be changed.
Can't resubmit that.
We can't, because part of it is that's the design we submitted to the province. But I mean, this grant's like it's a 5-year project, right? So council's gonna be involved in like doing a lot of other bits and pieces as we move forward. But I think what's happening with all these shovel-ready infrastructure projects is they give you like a month or two to get to this point and submit an application. So I think the staff completing the application were up until like 8 or 9, filling the application on October 1st. So yeah, we gotta move forward, but I think we're gonna have some time to relook at little bits and pieces. But yeah, so I think there's enough information to move forward, and I know the financial was really well described in the report itself. So there's no I don't think there's any new information.
So it's important to keep in mind that, it's a rare meeting that goes by here that we don't allocate funds for staff to do a project, and we rarely ask them to come back with the design details. This one we did, and we got them earlier on this month. Councillor Morrison.
sorry, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just probably going to echo what you just said there, is that I'm concerned that perhaps council isn't happy with this project going forward. I mean, I think they were greatly in need of a new library, and I'm hopeful that something can be developed in the airspace above it. It's just unusual in my time at council, which isn't nearly as long as the mayor's, but that I've ever seen anybody ask for the whole grant application to be brought forward for councillors to review. I don't see that that's our job. We ask the question, we pose the problem, and it's up to staff to come back, I believe, with an answer or a solution or a grant proposal that I, for one, probably don't have anywhere near the expertise to be reviewing, to comment on in any particular way. I do like to, as everybody knows, comment on the financials because I understand numbers a little bit. So I just find this unusual that we would delay going forward with this project. So unless there's something, Councillor Page, that you can tell me about this project that you think is going sideways, that we would have to review the grant application, I don't know why we wouldn't be going forward. I trust the staff. We've done, over the history of Nelson, we've done lots of excellent projects, and grant applications have been highly successful compared to many other communities in the province and across Canada, for that matter, in terms of cities of our size. So I'm sure the work is as superior as it always has been. So I'm fully in favor of going forward with this, and very hopeful that our share of the 3.7 million will be reduced by the time this actually starts being shovels in the ground.
Any further comments? Councillor Lochinvar, something new?
No, just to echo that this is a no-go decision, and it seems to me like we may get a little bit of extra information, but substantively, we've seen the design. It sounds like it hasn't changed. Source of funds seem pretty clear. The intent is to get that number to 0. I totally hear what you're saying when you're dealing with such a big ticket item, but my recommendation would be that we move ahead, because I just can't see saying no given how much work and how much we generally support it. Like, unless there's a red flag, but I don't see any red flags.
Thank you. I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much. All right, next one, Sebastian, thanks for sticking around, my friend. Is the Recovery Operations Center. Part of the city's recovery efforts, and the Recovery Operations Center has been liaising with many community stakeholders and gathering data to try and better understand the impact of the pandemic in our community. The purpose of this report is to update council on the findings, and it's very interesting, this report. It's amazing. All right, do you want to give us a bit of an overview? Is that okay with council?
Sure.
And,
okay, yeah. Quick overview. I mean, I think when all of this started, you know, I think the key word that I was hearing, or we were all hearing, was uncertainty, and you know, that was described in many different ways, but I think it kind of sums up. I think that word for me was the word that really stuck. And when we initially started a meeting with the business community, and also, I guess, a community group as a whole as well. So we had 2 different groups working, and this was in early June, before the restart plan was in full motion. And I think at that point in time, you know, we were talking about tourism. We were thinking, oh, if we get 60%, we're going to be lucky. And what does that do to our restaurant industry and retail? And, you know, also, like, if businesses can't be online, how are they going to survive, and things like that. So, and then slowly things rolled out, and, you know, I think the province did a good job in monitoring the situation. And ultimately, in our area, we had very few cases. And I think the tourism really came out. And I think we're still waiting on some actual data on the hotels. But, you know, we've been talking to hotel owners. We've been talking to the ED of Nelson Kootenay Lake Tourism. And, you know, July and August they were at 100%. And I think businesses did fairly well. Anyways, there's no visual closures. I think one of our main concern was, you know, what happens to Baker Street if we start seeing a lot of businesses get boarded up, and that hasn't been the case. And the city has been working on their 25-point economic stimulus plan. So, you know, the restaurant patios were one thing that we were able to move quickly on, and I think a lot of the businesses really appreciated that. And we met with the Chamber of Commerce in September, and we asked that question, and all the restaurant owners, most of the restaurant owners, were very satisfied with it. Some of them claiming to have the busiest seasons that they've ever had. And some of the retail folks were also in favor of them, and they said, yeah, I lose one parking spot, but to them, it's all about vibrancy of the downtown. It's about having people on our sidewalks. So, you know, it's been fairly positive, and, you know, there's always 2 sides of the coins. I guess some people are saying, oh, Nelson was too lax, you know, people weren't wearing masks. And But on the flip side, we heard from many retailers saying that, you know, people really appreciated coming out here and still felt safe and liked the vibes of our town. So I think in general it was nobody predicted what happened. So that was interesting to see. You know, I tried to bring a bit of some economic indicators just to try and monitor the situation. The construction industry has been very busy. You know, our building permit revenues are a bit lower, but that's just because we had a lot of multiple unit projects that were applied in 2019. But the actual economic spin-offs are happening right now as these projects are getting developed. I think real estate was interesting as well. You know, I think again in April and May, everything with the uncertainty and the shutdowns, nobody did anything, and then all of a sudden in June it just hit, and there was not a lot of properties on the market, but the demand was there, so it drove up price. And it was interesting to usually real estate is one of those indicators that shows confidence and with the real estate market, and it's not just in BC, it's across Canada. They've seen a lot of hot real estate markets, so it seems to say that there is some confidence. And the latest projections were saying that 2021 would be a pretty strong year here in the Kootenay. So again, an indicator. Tourism with again Nelson Lake Kootenay. Tourism did a good job with promoting the branding of smart travel, and I think you know, we heard the less faces, more spaces was kind of the theme. A lot of people coming out here to take part of the outdoor recreational amenities that we have. So that's definitely a strong point that we have. And again, City Campground did very well. Again, the hotels seem to have done well. Since then, the province has actually come out with their economic recovery plan, and they've announced a lot of what they're going to be doing in terms of their spending. And I just provided a quick some key points there. So $3 million in healthcare, creating new jobs and retraining people to get into these new positions right away. A lot of infrastructure funding is coming out, so we're right now, that's where we're focusing. I mean, the library is one project. There is another project with the civic renovation to make that you know, more of an efficient building. A new infrastructure program has come out for community economic recovery infrastructure. So that's there's $100 million available throughout BC, and that's 100% funded, which is something that you never see. Usually, you always have to contribute. So and that's due at the end of the month. So we're gonna be working hard to push our peer project that fits in the destination development stream. So it's all about creating local jobs. So that would be all sourced locally, and also creates a destination development. And it's part with these grants. What's interesting is all these ideas that we have through our through our official community plan or our downtown design strategy. There's a lot of big ticket items, and with these infrastructure grants, that's when you really have to be ready and hit them. And we're fortunate that we're putting a good team together, and we're able to basically get these projects to design into like a pretty good cost estimate, like within, you know, a couple of months. So pushing hard. And there's a new one that has just come out, and Nelson was invited to apply for it. So we're one of 33 municipalities, and I think Kevin did the math, and basically the way it's divided up, it's by population. So we should be, again, and there's another $1 million funding available for tourism related infrastructure. So a lot of those things are happening, and we keep monitoring the situation on a weekly
Sebastian,
basis.
I just
Yeah.
want to, so just for the public, that the Ladybird is a key part of that
Yes.
Hall Street project, and Council recalls you know, we're looking at phase 2 and hopefully finding a grant to get the Ladybird. Finally, that was the genesis of the whole project, was finding a home from the Ladybird. So we're able to, you know, pull that into that whole street package. Not, there was a number of things that we're going to have to do if we phase this, but now that if it's one project, we don't have to do some temporary stuff to prepare for that. So that's a real positive, that grant, and working with Touchstones in terms of, you know, how to best place that Ladybird. They were in full agreement that the Ladybird is the most important project from their perspective as well, and talking to the program manager for that program, stating that, yeah, no, you need to place it as part of that Hall Street Pier project, and that will be well placed. So hopefully we'll be successful, and, you know, again, not having to dig into our reserves. We got the 500,000 from CBT, and this can fund 100%, potentially the difference. And so that was, you know, just having those projects developed ongoing. It's a small change to, you know, plug in the Ladybird and cost that, etc. So that's allowed us to meet this very, very tight timeline.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, you know, the recovery effort was a bit difficult to really kind of get a grasp of, like, what is our role, what do we need to do as it's ongoing as well. It's not like, you know, for example, a flood or a wildfire. You see the damage and you can right away, like, kind of focus on that. But here it's very much somewhat invisible, so it was a bit harder. So I think throughout the conversation we've noticed that we have a lot of good key partners here. We have, you know, a strong tourism lead. We have our economic development partnership. We have the Chamber of Commerce. So a lot of people, everybody just shifted completely their focus on COVID and recovery. So I think really our role was to really monitor the situation, try to connect the dots where we could. So, you know, get some conversations going. And yeah, but ultimately I think we've noticed that, you know, everybody's on board, everybody's focused on it. So at this point in time, we're going to continue monitoring the situation, continue looking for infrastructure grants so that we can advance some of our long-term or short-term strategic goals, and yeah, continue working with our partners to see where things are at. I think we've created, you know, we've had some long-term relationships with these partners, and we've strengthened them through this process. So I think, yeah, we're very much going to continue working with them. So. Yeah, happy. That's kind of the overview. Happy to entertain any questions.
Just before that, I just want to, you know, emphasize, you know, how important it was to have really strong strategic goals by council and really strong planning. You know, that allowed us to, you know, quickly identify projects that met, moving forward a number of goals that, you know, this council specifically set, as well as, you know, as Sebastian mentioned, some really good long-term community planning that has, you know, sheets and sheets of potential projects. I think council members, when we had the workshop with you, and we had, I think, you know, 30 or 50 potential projects, and it was, you know, it really allowed us to meet very short timelines. So thank you guys.
Councilor Woodward.
Yeah, I think as I was reading through this, I was connecting with, well, first of all, I was connecting with how we lost things, but we also gained things throughout this experience. You know, we may have lost certain sectors, but other sectors really gained in strength because people were traveling locally and their spending habits were changed, and so it was very hard to predict. But all in all, I think we really kind of wove our way carefully through this process, which has been, I think, good. And the other aspect I think that's important to recognize is that through this process, I think the city as a whole is a stronger city because we weathered a pretty severe storm on a scale that, you know, hasn't been around for 100 years. a pandemic. So, that I find that's a silver lining here, is that there's a strength gained and a confidence gain that we can actually thread our way through these problems. And there are many problems in the horizons we're gonna have to thread our way through, but we can do this, and we know we can do that, and we're inventive as a community. So I just felt really proud as our community did this. So, and thank you for your work.
Yeah.
Partnerships were critical.
Yes, absolutely.
All of the good groups, like you just named the top 4 of them off there, but there was just a multitude around that.
Yeah,
as well that came to
yeah.
the tables.
And it was interesting to see how everybody was really willing to meet early on. Like some CEOs of some companies that have like 400 or 500 employees were ready to come and sit down and just tell their stories. I think people appreciated that opportunity to just have that.
I was telling Kevin one day, like the Emergency Operations Center, that the last council had started working on that, and it was almost like we knew this was coming. You don't want to say it out loud, but it was almost like we knew this was coming, because that just fell into place, and suddenly we're in the middle of COVID, like days later, really, when we opened the door downstairs there. It was amazing.
I suggest that we do really good planning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, so Councillor Page and then Councillor Lochtenberg, a few words.
Yeah, thanks, Sebastian. This has obviously been a long, hard slog, and you guys have done some amazing work. We've been at some of these economic development tables, and some of this stuff that's going on. There's been talk about the K-shaped recovery. I've heard a lot of celebration of what's gone right, and my question is, who do we need to help? Who's on the losing side of what's been happening around here, and how are we identifying that? Because there is lots of success stories, and I think that can lead us to a false sense of security, that everything's rosy, and it might look that way when you average it all out. But there have been some real winners in this process, and there have been some losers, and I'm just picking your brain as to where the biggest damage has been sustained in our community, and what can we do to support those people.
Yeah, and I think I was digging and looking for it, and it just wasn't apparent how, and we kept talking about, there's those that have done very well, and people in the business community are saying, like, how do we help those that are struggling? I don't know. We know that arts and culture was obviously hit, but they've managed. I think what's important is to ensure that these infrastructures or these assets don't shut down in the long term, and there's no indication that will be the case. Like, people were able to adapt. I think the civic theater is an important thing. Businesses, when we talk to businesses, they all talked about having to adapt and be nimble and flexible, and I think for the most part it's been fairly successful, and they've been able to to adapt. And I don't know if our region is different than other regions, but I was talking to I guess my equivalent in Tofino, and they were saying the same thing. They had this task force, this economic recovery task force, and they kept meeting over the summer, but they didn't know what to talk about because it was the busiest year they had. So things were kind of business as usual in a way. So again, I think we're very much in a monitoring role. Things may change. I'm not saying I'm not trying to paint like a completely rosy picture with this, because through some survey, some people have identified that they had reduced sales, and were significantly impacted. But again, it hasn't been really apparent. Nobody's kind of come up and say, hey, we need a lot of help. I think the vulnerable population is one that we're continuously working with, and Kootenay Career Development Center, they're working to get people really get them some technology, get them some training so that they can shift. So there's a lot of different entities that are targeting those groups. Bit of a long-winded answer, but I don't know. But I think what we need to do is just continue to monitor a situation. Things may change in the, you read about the K recovery is the newest thing. We've read a lot about a lot of things. And that quote that I added is that, any proxy that we would usually use to determine what's going to happen in the future have not been able to paint a clear picture. So I think like businesses, we need to be able to be flexible and continue monitoring so that we can shift. And then if some of those groups that come out and are really in need of help, we can try and connect the dots with the different organizations that we have.
Thank you.
Can
Councillor Lockenberg.
Can I just add, one of the things we certainly heard on the people side was, people like grandparents, that had to, step up and be those caregivers. Well, when, there was no daycares available, there was no schools available, all those things. And, I think we feel both the province and feds did a really good job of managing those so that schools could return to service. And take a lot of that pressure off. A lot of people, whether you're home trying to, do your full-time job, do schooling for your children, and manage a household, etc. Those were really, really challenging times for teachers, educators, you name it. Trying to do those. Just imagine trying to teach your kid and teach college at the same time, and those sorts of things. So the fact that the province moved carefully and thoughtfully and opened up and seemed to open up at the right time, us as citizens by and large did the right things, and we didn't have too many anti-mask rallies or social distancing rallies or any of that thing. So I think as a community, echo Councillor Woodward's, we stepped up. Did people think sometimes we're a bit too lax? Did people have different comfort levels? Yes, but in the end, I think we all did a pretty good job at that, including both the feds and the provincial governments. And I think their economic recovery plan are targeting some of those areas that Councillor Page has talked about, that where people actually had were impacted more than others. I think they've done a pretty good job of targeting those populations.
Yeah, I would say briefly that one area that we don't maybe or haven't talked about for the recovery as much is the most vulnerable populations, and how I want to say from a different perspective how pleased I am with how the police have, particularly our chief, Paul Burkhart, has stepped up. I think one thing we probably couldn't predict over the last number of months is that we'd have this massive upwelling of feeling and emotion around racism and so on. And a lot of that anger, rightful, righteous anger, got directed towards the police, and they really took it on. And I feel for them, because at the same time that they took a lot of that anger on, they were doing, at least in Nelson, a pretty bang-up job at carrying and doing their part to carry the vulnerable populations through and do it on our behalf as a city. And I think it's been a pretty hard road, and I really want to acknowledge the chief for his work in that.
Thank you. Thanks, Sebastian. Good job. It's be interesting now. The next few months will throw more challenges out there, but
yeah,
I feel good about the group that you've surrounded yourself with, and I'm quite confident we'll figure things out. And what's kind of interesting about what happened over the last number of months was it was very scary at the beginning. No question. We just didn't know what the future was holding, but we were it was almost like eating an elephant. You just do it one bite at a time, and and that's really what happened with the recovery program. It was just one step at a time. But the preparation by our staff in every department, and all the years that they've worked towards making our community resilient, whether it's at hydro or police, and as you mentioned, or fire, and the staff on this floor, or the folks that are digging the holes out in the streets, that knowledge base was critical for to get us through this. And you've seen tonight with the shovel-ready projects, and that's been talked about now for 15 years. Shovel-ready projects, and we have a list of them, and that's a credit to people like yourself and all the people that support this council on a regular basis to be able to have those projects actually shovel-ready, to be able to sit on this table and say, look, we've done our homework here. We're in line for this grant, and we've proven that it works. So, setting up that opportunity for you to sort of build this resilience piece for us is just one more thing that our city is famous for, is being able to adapt and adjust, and particularly city councils, not only today but in the past, and I'm sure in the future, are able to adjust basically on a dime, because we have good people in place to help us through these things, not only here but in our communities. And I just want to give you one example. When most people were staying at home, the Rotary Club was delivering Meals on Wheels. You know, and there was a lot of people that were scared to go to other people's doors to, for various reasons. But that's just one example.
Yeah.
There were numerous examples of that. And they were going out to picking up the meals, and they were taking them to people's houses. And at that time, you would feel like you were putting yourself at extreme risk just to do that. But people were willing to take that on, even though they were in an uncharted territory as far as the COVID went. And they were willing to go to people's homes to make sure they were properly fed. So proud of this community, how we've all worked together to make this happen. And a special thanks to council for giving you the liberty to go forward with this program, and to connect Kevin and Colin and all of our group here tonight that helped put that 25-point plan together. We're not out of it yet.
No,
it's
we're not.
definitely helped us
Yeah.
through it so far. So.
Yeah, and we're going to continue monitoring and adapting, and we'll report back to council as required on
Thank
this.
you. So there is a recommendation there, council, to Councillor Renwick and Councillor Woodward, that council direct Recovery Operations Centre to focus on COVID-19 communications and weekly community updates, providing support for community organizations to help with local recovery efforts, monitoring provincial and federal funding opportunities to invest in needed infrastructure and community resilience, and continue to gather data to monitor the situation and provide an update to council on a quarterly basis at a minimum or as required. So all in favour? Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sebastian.
Okay, yeah, great. Thank you.
Sebastian?
Hey, just an interesting story. This weekend I went camping. I was lighting a fire, and I had a newspaper from mid-June. You should go back and read some of those stories.
Yeah.
You just go, wow.
So your fire never got lit?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the paper's got to be good for something.
Yeah, it's fun to go back and read just a few months ago. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I might have to start getting the paper again.
Yeah, I had a similar experience. I was cleaning up the basement, and I found from April, and it was like it was very, very uncertain. And I think we kind of forget now that we're here, but it was incredibly uncertain at the time, and no one knew, and there was a lot of fear. But again, I just want to say that I think we worked through that, and at the end of it now, we understand our community better.
Absolutely.
So.
All right, thank you.
We need to be careful that we're not at the end.
No, we're not at the end, but I think we've come a long way.
Yeah.
The end of the beginning.
Yeah.
My liver's
All right,
feeling
so
better.
onward and upward.
My liver's feeling better.
Yeah. Cal's made more money on returning bottles than he did when he was selling cars.
That's Lorraine. She drinks a lot.
Okay. Okay, transit service exchange. Following presentation of the transit service study at the September Committee of the Whole meeting, staff are now asking Council for a resolution to direct staff to advance development of the business case in collaboration with BC Transit to pursue funding opportunities for the proposed Victoria Street Transit Exchange. And we had a really good report at the last meeting. Fortunately, BC Transit couldn't make it, but Kevin, you guys did a good job of, and Colin, and putting that out to us, and thank you very much for doing that. So, tonight we have a resolution in front of us. If somebody
Recommendation.
wishes
I'll
to
move the
move it,
recommendation.
Councillor Renwick, Councillor Morrison seconded, and that council directs staff to collaborate with BC Transit to advance the development of the BC Transit business case to pursue supporting federal and provincial funding for construction of a transit exchange on Victoria Street. And further, staff begin stakeholder engagement as required to support and identify preferred transit exchange concept. Any questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor? Thanks very much. I think it's very exciting. The possibilities with that. All right, now we're on to reports.
Rusty Moose?
Move receipt to reports, anybody?
I was looking for it.
I see that the fish and sports
say
has
when you
replaced the
become a
rusty
councillor.
moose. That's all.
Sorry.
So to be clear on that, Your Worship, that's for the light bar for the rescue boat. So the city police and fire rescue have a boat down at Prestige.
Oh, yeah,
And
right.
so one of the challenges they've had in the last little while is they have needed to be out
Oh, at night
and
or whatever.
at night and trying to find people, get them in the boat, save people with a flashlight.
Pit lamping works on those fish, I'll tell you. Boy.
Exactly. So anyway, that's what that's for.
Good, thank you. I just spotted that one in there. I thought, okay. Anybody
great to
want to move
see.
receipt to the?
I'll move receipt. Good to see no Amazon in this month's,
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Brand ourselves the Amazon Free City.
Yeah.
Oh, that's where you put it, okay.
So there was- All in favor? Carried, thanks very much. Minutes and so forth from the Housing Committee, the Public Library Board, and the Cultural Development Committee. Is there anything anybody wanted to pull out of that as a highlight?
Nope.
Hearing none. Move receipt, please. Councillor Woodward, Councillor Renwick, all in favor? Thanks very much. Action items. Well, obviously, we have none of those. Oh, yeah, we do.
Lots.
I was actually noticing that quite a few were actually done. The paving, the housing needs assessment,
No, it's,
the active transportation's well on its way.
yeah.
The recovery update, farmers market.
We did the virtual
And there's
UBCM.
I think the final meeting for the farmers market's coming up,
Yeah.
well, like for the season is coming up. Pretty soon, Sarah, right? You see it on your calendar
So
there.
people know next Saturday is the last
Market.
market. So we have tomorrow and Saturday.
Yeah.
And then that's it for the season, so get out there and get those delicious,
Yeah,
Carrots.
last Saturday was really
my
busy.
God, the
at least
carrots are
when I was there.
fantastic. Along with everything else.
Thanks, Sarah, for all your good work on that this year too, helping out with the, and
Thanks to Jordan.
yeah, Jordan did a great job, thank you, yeah.
That Thanksgiving photo booth was quite spectacular.
Even in the pouring rain, it was.
It was so
You
busy
had a
down there.
stage
I
to
couldn't
hide
believe
under.
it.
We had good numbers
Yeah,
on
that's good.
Saturday.
Excellent, yeah.
That was beautiful.
Okay, so move receipt of the action items.
Just so
Cal and
everyone's-
Jesse, okay, go
Just
ahead,
so
Cal.
everyone's aware, the contract for the active transportation pipelines has been awarded.
Good.
Consultants are out there, laying out, the work that's gonna be done, so
Yeah, I see that,
I
yeah.
think they're hoping to get that underway and get a start on it, this year, so.
Good.
So that's another one that's,
I see the red paint down on the road.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about it the other day, you know, a few people have talked to me about, you know, about the bike, lane on High Street and I'm thinking to myself, you know, if we can't have one street in our city that you can ride a bike on, seriously, like with all the streets we've got, so it's a great start and we look forward to doing bigger and better things going forward, so. Yeah, I'm glad to see that happening. It was good to see the surveyors down there putting the red lines down and it's gonna be a reality pretty soon, so. Thanks for that, yeah. All right. With that, I think we're at the end of our meeting and thanks everybody and I'd like a motion to adjourn, please. Nothing else?
Your guy.
Councillor Renwick, you got a
I'm your guy.
second by Councillor Woodward, all in favor?